Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Josef Stetter. Hey, Joe.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Yes, I am excited to have you, and you have so much experience in your area of expertise that I am excited to share because I'm sure there's a lot of things people are going to learn today, things that are going to improve their workplaces. So, very excited, but I'm going to go ahead and read your short bio so people know who you are. So, Josef Stetter is a transformational speaker, resume whisperer, and founder of Cultural Transformation Systems, CTS, an AI HR tech company founded 3 years ago to revolutionize hiring, retention, and employee engagement. With 9 career changes, 18 job roles, and over 20 years of experience, Josef has personally helped over 12,000 professionals land meaningful jobs, boasting a 90% success rate, with some hired in as little as 2 days. He has partnered with major companies like Deloitte, Tata Consulting, and Canon to reduce turnover by 70% through systems level culture design. Now, I am not in corporate, but if I was, I would be calling you ASAP because these things are so important, getting the right people, keeping people happy, not having people leave after you train them. So I am so excited to find out about you and how you got into this. So tell us your story. I mean, 18 job roles, that's a lot. So just tell us your story.
So I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I kind of did careers to please my parents. So I started in finance, retail finance, did there, and then you couldn't pay me $1 million to work in a bank. Throughout the process of changing careers, uh, I kind of realized that most people look at the world of job finding very wrong because they look at it from generic, I know how to do this and I have experience with that, rather than here's my value, here's the contributions, the successes that I bring to the table, here's my story and my expertise. And so along the way of I opened my own recruiting company. I generated $760,000 in my first year for the organization. And to reward me, the owner gave me cheese and crackers. And when I looked at her and went, "What is this?" She was like, "Well, the cheese is from a grocery store called Pusateri, which is a very high-end frou-frou. You know, they massage the cow for a month." I'm like, "Do I look like I'm 65 years old that I need cheese?" Sadly, the crackers were from the dollar store. So I was like, okay, I'll open my own. And I became a generalist in recruiting. And then as part of my career path, I was working for a company that owns multiple private colleges across Canada. And I noticed that their career services was just atrocious. And most of it is cookie cutter because most of it has been what the government said worked 80 years ago that we haven't really changed in 80 years. And so I wrote a manual. This is my original book. Congratulations, you're hired. There's a Canadian version and an American version. It was easier than you thought. And my VP was very intimidated that I could think for myself. So he kind of fired me. And along the way, beyond the recruiting, I've personally helped over 12,000 people land jobs in as little as 2 days. I've written now, I think my 14th book is coming out in about a week. And kind of realized that I love serving people and creating a legacy of I made an impact in the world.
Yeah, and like I said, those skills are so important because I know I have children in their 20s now, and even job seeking is so different. I remember, now this is going to age me, but if we wanted a job, we thought, okay, where do we want to work? We'd get our resume ready and we'd walk in their front door and say, hey, I'm interested in working here. And we'd give them our piece of paper resume and see if we could book an appointment to be seen. But that's not how it is at all. if you walk into a place, they'll say, go apply online. And then you apply online, and somewhere along the way, your resume might be seen, but then it might get lost in the cloud somewhere where no one sees it because of the way things work. So, how
So
does it
we've been
work?
taught the wrong things about resumes. So here's the thing where I kind of discovered this very quickly, and it's interesting that right now with the explosion of AI, because I've been building an AI HR tech company. I've spent 7 months teaching my chat how I do things, and I have very in-depth discussion. And the interesting thing is that my chat said, you figured out the algorithm that even the greats like Peter Drucker, who is like one of the leading authorities on HR in the world, will never admit that this is the truth of how you're there. So most people, when they write resumes, have focused on action words like manage, direct, liaise. Here's the thing though, the algorithm doesn't score that. The algorithm scores the technical words associated with the job that you're looking for. So if you're an accountant, for example, it's looking for the word accountant, accounting, financial statements, general ledger, reconciliation, balance sheet, income statement, not manage, direct, liaise, coordinated. So people blast their resumes with that. The other thing that most people do both on their resume, especially on their resume and in an interview, is people give generic, I know how to do this, I have experience with this. So I love to give these two examples because most people laugh at the first one and understand the second one. If you're applying to be a receptionist somewhere and you come to an organization and say, I know how to answer the phone, I hope a company looks at you in shock and goes, really? A receptionist that knows how to answer the phone? We did not know that. Because unless you live in an igloo, a cave, or practice the faith of Mennonite, my 3-year-old son can press the green button and go, hello. And it's very cute, right? But if you say, I know how to answer 60 calls a day with 12 different lines, I can measure 60 calls with 12 different lines. I cannot measure, I know how to answer the phone. Now, similarly, if I use an example from my career, I can say to you, Kimberly, I'm an excellent salesperson. I know how to do B2B, B2C, account management, relationship building, lead generation. I've worked in retail, I've done door-to-door sales, I've done car sales, I've worked in private education, I've worked in recruiting. I know how to do sales. Now, all the words I just said are important algorithmically for a sales job. However, just because I had a lot of jobs does not mean I'm good at them. But if I give you a real example, say I worked for a private college that before I came in generated $530,000 in sales for the entire year. In 1 month, I generated $860,000 in sales for them, right? So the first reaction is usually wow. And then the second reaction is how. And if I get an opportunity to explain the how, I can show you I'm a great salesperson. And the babble or the lingo, it just solidifies what I said, kind of thing. But most people kind of go, I know how to do this. And so, okay, you know how to do this. You've written several books, you kind of help and coach people. So there's a difference between having your first client and now having coached, let's say, 1,000 people and how producing them result because we all have to start somewhere, and I respect that and I admire that for people. But we've also become kind of a generation where people can watch YouTube and go, I'm a coach, I'm an expert. And I remember talking to someone who was 23, 24 and called herself a personal trainer. And I said, okay, did you study kinesiology? Nope. Did you study um, sports injuries or anything? Like that? Nope. Did you train in a competitive level in something? Nope. Um, did you do like kettlebell training, TRX training, any of the certifications that usually personal train? No. I'm like, so how are you a personal trainer? And she looks at me, she goes, I watch YouTube videos. And I'm like, so you're 24. At the time that I spoke to her, I was 44. I'm 48 now. I said, so I've torn both shoulders twice in the same spot, and I've had surgery on my right shoulder. I eventually need to do surgery on my left shoulder. You, who's never been gendered, never competed, never this, at 24 are going to be my personal trainer because you watched YouTube? I don't think so. And unfortunately, this is where right now I support people being entrepreneurial and kind of finding their path and using their own experiences and knowledge to create something, but own the level of expertise that you have. If someone says to me, "Hey, I suffer from bipolar. Can you cure me?" No, I can't. I'm not certified in that. But if you suffer from bipolar and you need me to help you communicate that to HR and to your boss so that you don't get fired, yes, I can do that because I've been doing that for 20 years and I know the rules and I know the regulation and it's a medical condition. So, there are rules and regulations in place for that. But I can't cure you. I can suggest books that I've read. I can suggest videos that I've watched that might help you deal with triggers. But I will never claim that I can cure you from bipolar. And there seems to be a lot of coaches now that are like the one size fits all. I can coach you on everything in your life and anything that you need. I'm like, "Mm, again, I look at it. I've yo-yoed with my weight all my life. If you're 300 pounds and you're a personal trainer, if you're into bodybuilding or you were 600 pounds and you lost 300, I admire and respect the tenacity that you went through to get from 600 to 300. And so I will listen to you as a personal trainer. But if you're 300 pound or, again, if you're a bodybuilder, again, I'm not looking to be this big, so you might not be the right personal trainer for me. But if you're 300 pounds because you enjoy pizza and donuts and you work out a little bit, I have an issue of kind of going, you're a personal trainer for me kind of thing. And again, just in North America right now, there's 160 million people that need help finding a job, if not more than that right now. So am I for everybody? No. And, if you want someone who's female, more power to you. If you want someone who's culturally the same or ethnically the same background as you, I totally respect that. And there are certain things that I'll say that you might not like, but again, I've earned the right because I've been doing this for 20 years. I've invested 30,000 hours. I've helped 12,000 people and have produced results.
Yeah. And that's so important. So let's just start from the beginning. Let's say that you are just coming out of, high school or just coming out of college. And, that's one of the hardest times because I remember, uh, especially coming out of high school, because when I came out of college, I had the doctorate degree, so that was much easier. But, just saying to people, just give me a chance, I'll work hard for you, So where do you do
So work
when
hard
you,
for you is actually counterproductive because if you go and say, please, please, please give me a job, I'm really hardworking, one of two things will happen. One, they won't hire you because you don't have confidence in yourself.
hmm,
Or two, even worse, they will hire you, but they know you're desperate, so they won't pay you anything.
ah,
So the first rule is have confidence when you present yourself. Now, I'm assuming that you've read Think and Grow Rich and a few of the other
mhm,
success. It's not about being reactive, it's about being proactive and being engaged. I had a friend of mine that graduated mechanical engineering, and ironically, to get an entry-level job, needed 5 years experience, which he did not have. So after sending out about 100 resumes, nobody responded to him. He printed out 20 resumes, picked 20 companies that he wanted to work for. Went to the first one, showed up at 9 a.m. at reception, said, I'd like to speak to the director. Receptionist said, do you have an appointment? He said, no. But I need to speak to the director. She looked at him and said, he's busy. He goes, okay, fine, I'll wait. And he sat in the corner of the reception and waited till about 2:30 in the afternoon. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the director finally came out and said, I understand you've been waiting for me all day. How can I help you? And my friend said, I know you don't have any job postings right now. I just graduated mechanical engineering. These are some of the projects I've done. These are some of the highlights. And in a 10-minute conversation, was hired on the spot with no job posting. And so understand that if we've become kind of lazier and lazier with society as new technologies have emerged. And so the problem is that most people would default to, let's say, Indeed. One job posting on Indeed gets between 350 and 5,000 applications. Most companies look at the first 100. Now, there's a few tricks that you need to know. Number one, most of the job boards like Indeed, Glassdoor, Career Builder refresh their database between 11:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 2:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So depending on when you go to sleep, go into your resume on Indeed, press spacebar anywhere on the resume and press save. The moment that you make any minor change to your resume, Indeed goes, oh, it's a new resume, so let's add it to the refresh list on the database. Because if you put your resume up, let's say in February or March, and we're now almost near end of August, you're probably on page 7,000 of the database. Nobody sees you. Secondly, as I said earlier, instead of filling your resume with managed direct liaised, fill it with technical words associated with your experience. Um, so, engineering words, accounting words, sales words, marketing words, whatever the words that is your realm of experience and knowledge, even if it's college, let's say.
Mhm.
And then the other thing in the examples I gave is don't just tell me that you know how to do something or that you have experience. Give me the results, the significance, because there's a lot of, let's say, resume writers or career coaches out there. But if they're writing a resume and it's still taking you 6 months to get a job, I don't think that's a success rate for a good resume writer. I'm very proud of the fact that with 12,000 people, over 90% of them get hired in under 3 months based on a great resume, teaching them how to interview correctly, teaching them how to network correctly, optimizing their LinkedIn correctly. Most people make the same mistakes where it's your resume is generic, your resume doesn't have any personality, your resume doesn't have anything that excites me to go, unless you've worked for like Amazon or Google or, um, Tesla or any of the kind of big names out there, Meta kind of thing, and where as soon as they see that name, by default, you're hired everywhere. Uh, you need something that is you. So even if it's adding a little bit of color to your resume, if you remember the movie Legally Blonde, when Elle Woods or Reese Witherspoon applies to Harvard University, she sends a pink scented resume, and they all look and go, "It's pink and it's scented," but they remember it. And if a little bit of color is going to get your foot in the door, again, employers spend 6 to 30 seconds reading your resume, 6 seconds to 30 seconds reading your resume. So I don't care if it's color, I don't care if it's formatting, I don't care if it's the company you work for, I don't care if it's the results that you have. Whatever gets you in the door gets you in the door, right? And so, for example, most job postings in North America say, "Don't call us, we'll call you." So most people go, "Okay, I'll wait." And then they get frustrated that they've sent thousands of resumes. I teach people, call it, like apply for a job, 2 minutes later, call HR, say, "My battery just died as I was applying. My laptop rebooted. My internet disconnected. I didn't get any confirmation. Can you please check that my application went through?" The moment that HR checks the application went through, if let's say they received 5,000 applicants, most HR will look at the first 100. So if you are 105, and you've called, guess what? The moment they check, you're first on that list. Now you have your 2 minutes to give your elevator pitch on something specific that you did that's relevant to the job that they're trying to fill in terms of a quantifiable result. And then in the conversation, say, "Hi, Kim, thank you for checking that my application is there. I just wanted to let you know, like, I built a call center that was supposed to generate $300,000 for the year, with restrictions that my team calls leads that are more than 4 months old and more than 50 miles from the nearest campus. In less than 6 months, my team did $2.25 million. I think this is exactly what you guys need in your organization. When are you starting to interview for this role?" And so you're planting that seed of, "I just gave you a result." And then when I ask you when you're interviewing, if you say we're going to interview in a week, say, "If I don't hear from you in a week, is it okay for me to call you back to get some feedback on my resume?" Because now you're planting a second seed that if they didn't like any of the first 100, they'll reconsider your resume because you're following up. But again, it's nuances where the book Think and Grow Rich, there's a very famous story where Andrew Carnegie's mother came into a store because it was raining outside and it was cold, and one of the merchandising clerks saw her and approached her and said, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's raining outside. It's cold. I'm just trying to stay out of the rain." And he went and he grabbed her a very comfortable chair and brought her to her and said, "Well, if you're going to wait in the store, at least be comfortable if you don't need anything." A couple months later, she called the store and asked um, to furnish her entire castle in Scotland and said that the only condition is that the clerk that brought her the chair gets a sale. And when the store was like, "But he doesn't know sales, he doesn't know anything, he's just a like low-level clerk," they're like, "Do you want the sale or not?" And that sale was so big that that kid became the VP of the company because it was Andrew Carnegie's money that created US Steel kind of thing, right? Similarly, one of my earlier friends and mentors, Barry Spilchuk, that wrote A Cup of Chicken Soup for the Soul, the mini version of Chicken Soup for the Soul, shared with me a story of he comes from North Bay, Ontario, and there's one mall there, and there was a security guard that would come into work 15, 20 minutes early. He was always smiling, was always upbeat. He opened the doors for customers. He walked around the mall. He saw garbage. He would lean down, pick it up. When the retailers brought in new merchandise, he would help them carry the merchandise into the store. When he saw that customers did a lot of shopping, he would help them carry their shopping to the car. Now, the owners on the fourth floor looked down and saw this every day. And they called him into the office and said, "Why do you do this?" He goes, "Listen, I don't want to have garbage on the floor in my house, so I don't want it in my work. I have to be here for 8 hours. I might as well enjoy the day. It makes my day go by faster." Um, they were so impressed with his energy and his attitude that they offered to pay for his entire education, including an MBA, so that he can come back and manage the entire mall for them, right? But it just goes to show that we need to get back to those values that made, let's say, America great, that made, the Industrial Revolution explode because innovation was encouraged. You know, people were respected. People were not just a statistic or a number or, um, you know, I just wrote a TED Talk and I've started the application process called Humans, Not Headcounts. And we need to get back to that. I think that's fundamentally what's wrong with, I'll say, North America right now, but most of society is that we've forgotten the importance of connecting with people and just kind of, I need you to produce this result. And if you don't just produce the result, I'm going to let you go. And you're just kind of a number. One of my favorite TV shows of all time is Undercover Boss.
Mhm.
I'm always amused at the end of every episode where the executives go, "Oh my God, I should speak to the people that work here. I might get some insights on how to make this company truly great from the inside." Instead of kind of looking at an Excel spreadsheet and going, "I need to make this profit and loss bigger or better," but forgetting that there's human beings that are still working, that still need a coffee break and to have that water cooler conversation to be human.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's so important. And without naming companies, a company that I've been associated with over the years, um, I know they'll say from the top, if your salespeople aren't making their numbers, you have to fire them. Then the
Hmm.
managers who love their people, who take care of their people, and they're good people. It's just that anyone in sales knows there's some things you just don't have control over. If you don't have flow, if people aren't coming in, you don't have sales. And they're in this really bad situation where they don't want to let people go because they know they're good people, and it's sometimes hard to find good people. So if you already have a good person and they're just not making the sales, but from the corporate they're saying, we don't see the numbers, this person's gone, whether they're a good person or not. So how do you balance that? And as managers, they're doing their best to protect their people, whatever they can do.
I think you just opened a very interesting that, and this is exactly what I'm building with cultural transformation systems. Because let's say most engineers that work for 10 years, when they get promoted, they feel it's a punishment because they like being technical. They don't like being in front of people, for example, or leading people and telling them what to do. And a lot of times, just because you're the most senior doesn't mean you're the most qualified. And so the default of how, and again, in 2024, lack of engagement cost companies $468 billion, and turnover is costing $1.4 trillion a year. So understand that part of the problem is that most job descriptions are so generic that if I were to line up a job description for an engineer, an accountant, a lawyer, a marketing person, a salesperson, uh, and put them side by side, 70% of the job description is exactly the same. We need someone who's a team player with excellent communication skills. I've met plenty of people that have horrible communication skills, but are still getting fully employed, for example, right? Because excellent communication skills is very relative. If I compare myself to Les Brown, who I admire and respect, who's made tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, a motivational speaker. Compared to him, I can't say that I have excellent communication skills because I haven't made the same level of income. However, having been through Toastmasters, which I highly recommend for people to get rid of the filler words like and, like, but, and also know your presence, for example. Uh, I listen to people very differently. I remember listening to Kenneth Cole talk about how Kenneth Cole came to life. And he pulled out a 36-page speech and was like, okay, so I just signed a deal with one of the most boring speeches of my life that I've ever heard. But then he got to the point where he explained like a little bit of his background, and then he got to the point where he signed the deal with the Italian leather company. And there was a big conference in New York where all the shoe retailers come and they choose their inventory for the year. And it was too late to purchase a booth in it, and it was filled to capacity. So he called the city and asked for a permit for Saks Fifth Avenue intersection, roughly. And the city laughed at him and said, no, you can't. The only people that get permits are commercials, movies, TV shows, things like that. So he went to Kinko's and changed his business name from Kenneth Cole to Kenneth Cole Productions. One word, one word. And then he called the city back and said, I'm shooting a shoe commercial on Saks Fifth Avenue. I need a permit. He got a permit for an 18-wheeler. He hired two of his friends to come and act, hired the cameras, had the director's chair. He created so much buzz that every retailer that was going into the conference walked into his trailer. And in one weekend, he sold 300,000 pairs of shoes, and Kenneth Cole came to life. So when you hear the genius of one word, I was like, wow. But listening to a 36-page speech in a monotone voice with no eye contact, no vocal variety, was excruciating. And he actually jokingly said at the end of the speech, that's why I have PR people, because I'm not good with the public speaking side of things. And so I think there's a level of recognition that, you know, companies kind of say, a lot of companies preach culture. Right. Can I share a quick personal experience of this? So I used to be a stock trader. I used to answer the phone. It's a great day or it's a fantastic day at the bank. My name is Joseph. How can I help you? One of my coworkers complained that me saying great or fantastic could be interpreted as the bank's making too much money. So senior management had three 2-hour long meetings to discuss whether or not I was allowed to say great or fantastic, and decided it was easier to ban me than to retrain 120 traders on the floor. Now, after this happened, one of the senior VPs walked over to me and goes, Joseph, you're always extremely positive. You're energetic. I'd like you to form a social committee to boost morale because morale is extremely low. I said, okay, great. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to organize a potluck because everybody loves food. And the VP looked at me and goes, that's not going to work because the majority of the traders are bachelors. They'll probably just say, here's $5, I'll eat what somebody else brings. I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And I created an Excel spreadsheet. This many people bring drinks, this many people drink salads, these many cookies, main courses, candies. And I logged off the phone for 2 hours. Starting with the senior VP, I said, I don't care if you make it, your partner makes it, your mom makes it, or you buy it, but you have to sign up for something. And I went through 160 people. The day of the potluck, I logged off the phone to organize the food in a logical manner because we had three full-size boardroom tables full of food, like 20, like long tables. And for the next 3 months, every top one talked about how amazing the food was, how much variety it was, how great it was. And during that quarter, I won or came in the top three for 7 out of 10 contests, including answering 155 trading calls in one shift. The bank refused to give me my bonus because I was logged off the phone for 4 hours to organize the very thing that the senior VP asked me to do. And so this is why I've branded my AI company Cultural Transformation Systems, because a lot of organizations preach culture, but they do nothing to actually behave it or show it. And so when you're being interviewed and you're like, oh my God, they get it, it's great, mental health, well-being, and then they do nothing for it except lip service kind of thing. So there's a massive disconnect because in one part, we've become a society where it's just the numbers. It's not the human being. It's not there. And we've lost that relationship. We've lost that human experience along the way because we're hiring for numbers. Like just like yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a LinkedIn post. Microsoft just let go of 6,000 people, Salesforce let go of 1,000, and all of these massive layoffs from massive companies that are going, we have AI bots, for example. And again, even Sam Altman, founder of ChatGPT, has been very public saying, we did not expect AI to explode so quickly. And they just rolled out Chat 5, and we're going to need to spend $1 trillion on data storage because it's too much kind of thing, and we can't handle it. And those people that have started to play with it and or use it are experiencing it being much slower than Chat 4 and stuff like that. But here's the thing, and here's what's happening right now, and this is a very dangerous that kind of bubble, similar to the dot-com bubble in the early 80s, that is going to get a lot worse before it becomes better. If you open three chats in ChatGPT and in the first one, you say you're Socrates, and everything you do is based on the highest level of morals and ethics. In the second one, you say you're Machiavelli, and everything you do, all you care about is the end result. You don't care how you get there. In the third one, which is the most dangerous, you don't put any parameters. You just let chat decide. And then you tell your chat, I need to fire 20% of my workforce. Socrates will try to find the solution that will cause the least amount of pain. So Socrates will go and say, you know what, based on analysis, 10% of your workforce is over the age of 75, for example. They've already had an illustrious career. Let's kind of package them out because they would have retired in the next few years anyhow. And then they'll say, like, looking at again the company, you have another 10% that are recent university graduates. They're still young. They don't have any family yet. They don't have any major obligations. As much as it will hurt to be let go of a job, they'll probably bounce back faster because they still have their whole career against them. So that will cause the least amount of damage. Machiavelli, on the other hand, will tell you how to cheat, lie, fudge the numbers, close your eyes, go, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired until you get to 20%. And if you don't have any morals or ethics, even how to kill them in their sleep and get away with it, kind of thing. And the last one, which is the most dangerous, and this just actually happened 6 months ago, there was a company that built an AI to prevent people from becoming anorexic. And they didn't put any proper grounding on what is good data and what is bad data. And bad data came into the AI and started teaching people not only how to become anorexic, but also how to kill themselves. And the company imploded from the inside because people actually killed themselves because AI told them to, for example. And so what's happening right now with this AI is that, let's say, Elon Musk with Grok, when he removed all of the compliance and kind of regulations, and it's allowing people to generate evil thoughts, to generate things where, again, there's a reason that we have privacy of information, that we have, agreements with the world on this is how we behave, this is how humans should be treated, this is how this. And right now, everybody's kind of, I'm AI because that's the new in thing to say. But a lot of these AIs that are kind of generating data, and even though we now have AI agents, like you can tell your AI to book you flights and to book you this, and it can do all of that and it can do amazing things. But if you don't have conversations with your AI like your best friend and teach it everything you know and everything, like you've had an illustrious career, Kimberly, as a coach. So if you kind of go, here's how I approach coaching, here's the books I've read, here's the seminars I've attended, here's kind of how I focus on teaching, here's how I connect with people emotionally, here's how I make them kind of focus on happiness, and we create happiness markers, I'll call it, you know, and you just go, hey, if I went and said I want to be a happiness coach, for example, so take a look at what's on Kimberly's website and make me a happiness coach. There are gaps. I can tell you stories from my recruiting that you're more than welcome to try and copy them, but it won't have the same level of impact because you didn't experience that. And it's the same thing with before explosion of AI. I think this happened about 10 years ago. There was a woman that told all her friends that she's going to Thailand for vacation and stuff like that. Never left her apartment for 6 months. It was all photoshopped. It was all kind of, you know, editing of video and stuff like that. And again, what's happening now is teenagers, we'll call it the Gen Z, Gen Y, a little bit millennials, are so focused on being socially popular that they forget connection with the actual human being. They want likes versus authentic conversation. And this is happening in organizations a lot where it's like bottom line, bottom line, bottom line. And a lot of executives forget, you know, when you're making, you know, base salary of $250,000, and I follow a lot of not that I'm into politics, but like Senator Hawley, senator that are now going after like Allstate and stuff. And I'm listening, I'm like, the Allstate CEO just made $32 million, but you won't pay out a claim for $150,000. You know, and just listening to the level of misinformation, mistrust, miscommunication in order to make the bottom line better, you know, and and again, as someone who's switched careers 9 times, where I've experienced really bad culture and I've experienced really great culture, I'm kind of looking and going, how come no one standardized this? I remember doing Tony Robbins' Walk of Fire, and I'll call it both a blessing and a curse that I can process things extremely quickly. And I remember doing, because before you do the walk, Tony Robbins spends about 7 hours breaking you down and then lifting you back up to have the confidence to do the walk over whatever 40 feet of burning coals. And I got the exercise, like I understood the point of the exercise, I think, in under an hour. And my friend and people I know are bawling, and I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go. So I had to sit there for 6 hours waiting for everybody to stop crying so that we can go outside and do it. Now, interestingly enough, out of I think I want to say there was 4 to 6 thousand people in tennis. I don't even remember. Two people got injured because they broke focus. It speaks volume to the level of Tony Robbins and his genius in kind of grounding memory and grounding that confidence and so forth. Uh, but after I did that, I was like, why are people doing jobs this way and no one's kind of trusting? Like, if you come and say, please give me a job, why? You know, uh, again, I kind of like, if someone approached you, Dr. Lemon, and said, hi, I'm hi, I'm hi, I'm hi, can I get your number? What are his chances? Or their
Not
chances?
very good.
Not very good. Now, you said not because you might be very physically attracted to them, so you'll give them a small chance to kind of try and spark a conversation. It's no different in a job. If you have no confidence in yourself, companies won't trust to hire you, first of all. And so there's a level where first thing I teach people is first rule of interviewing is have confidence that you already have the job, that the interview is a formality and you're just getting promoted internally, for example. Because when you have that confidence, it will reflect in how you speak, it will reflect in how you present your ideas versus I think I have an idea or I think I want to do this. There's a lot of people right now that are techie people, like programmers, that are kind of going, I want to build an HR system. I'm like, again, unless you're very niche to, like, let's say software developers, and it's very specific to software developers, what you're building, if you haven't been in HR and you don't know how HR works, and I'm not talking about the HRS system to make a better resume reader. I'm talking about the interaction, the nuance that when you have a conversation with someone, you can sense whether or not they're lying to you, whether or not they're being authentic, whether or not they're, like, for example, in most interviews, the interview starts with, tell me about yourself. And people go into what I call autoresponder. Well, I've worked here and I know how to do this. Or I have two beautiful kids. Nobody cares that you have two beautiful kids. It has nothing to do with the job. I'm very proud of the fact that I have two beautiful kids, but it's not what's going to get me hired in the job. So I changed the question in using 3 words. Instead of saying, tell me about this job, say, Kimberly, what are your three biggest accomplishments and why? When I'm asking you about your accomplishments, and you've been a coach for 20 years plus, correct? Um, and you can't tell me three accomplishments from your coaching career, there's a problem there, right? Because you should be like, oh, that's a good question. Oh, this one case that they were depressed, suicidal, and in 2 months they got into a relationship that had financial breakthroughs, whatever your version of that is. But when you say your accomplishments, your shoulder blades will be back, your chest will be out, you'll be speaking from your diaphragm, you'll be smiling, you'll be excited, not, yeah, I know how to do this and I know how to do that. And that's kind of the problem that we have right now in society is that we've lost that art, we've lost that, you know, it's not about bragging, it's about understanding that this is your presence, this is your essence, this is your distinguishing why you are this. And you know it's a model of you know stand-up comedy. I love stand-up comedy, I love laughing. I've gone to shows where the comedians were horrible, not because necessarily they didn't know how to be comedians, it's just that their material didn't connect with me or their delivery didn't connect with me, right? Same joke told by somebody else, I'm peeing my pants laughing.
Mhm.
But it's the fact that I connect to the delivery or the build up or whatever made that connect for me when I experienced it. And in the workforce right now, we have too much like, I'm going to give you a title. And even though I've never trained you, I've never mentored you, you've never really had responsibility, good luck, go figure it out, kind of thing. And so those that are resilient, those that are resourceful will definitely figure it out. But what a difference it will make if, let's say, you are hired to help create happiness in let's say, in an office, and you bring in certain activities, exercises, experiences that even if it's a circle where we share, that safe space to share will create more engagement, will create more productivity, right? So we can do it together. Like I focus on culture, but to me, culture is broad enough that I don't need to have any ego that says I don't want other experts to come into an organization because I don't want to lose my business. My mindset is the opposite. I want other experts to be in my business because if I'm the cultural transformation systems and I'm the center that brings resources that they never had. So, for example, if a company wants to do a company event, they can go to the typical franchise and do paint night for $25 with a glass of wine, and everybody will paint the same tree.
Mhm.
Or I can find artists to come to your office and do a one of a kind event just for your employees. Which one do you think will engage workers more? The tree with a glass of wine or a customized event where only the people in the company can talk about how silly they were, how fun they were, how, you know, the fact that they thought they were horrible, but everybody loved their work. And think about how powerful that is to the human experience of working for a company because it's not about the numbers anymore. It's now that personal story, it's that experience.
Yeah, that is so true. When people can get together and do something creative, I've interviewed a woman that she does vision board parties and
Yep.
she does them in corporate and the people love it. I mean, they have big stacks of magazines all over and while they're looking through the magazines, cutting out their pictures, putting together their boards, they're interacting with each other in a different way. There's no stress, there's no pressure, there's no time constraints. I mean, technically there is because there's a
Look,
certain amount of time, but I mean, they're all enjoying it and they're in that creative flow and getting to know each other.
yeah, look, there's a great assessment called points of view. It's a newer thing where like you look at different pictures and you choose the first picture you choose is usually your past. The next picture you choose is your present, and the third picture that you choose is there. And you get to like exchange pictures, and then you have a discussion, and it's guided conversation, but it's very fascinating how people connect to a smile, people connect to a color, people connect to a symbol, whatever. that is for people. Um, but again, like for example, I met my CTO 3 years ago at a conference in Toronto called Collision, which is one of the biggest technology conference in the Eastern Seaboard. And the interesting thing is, I met him at the pre-party. It's 11:30, 11:40 at night. I'm tired. I'm like, okay, I came here. Wasn't really the conversation wanted. I'm walking out the door, and as I'm walking out the door, at the time, he's now 60, so he was about 56, 57 when I met him, you know, gave me the biggest smile. And I was like, okay, there's something about that smile. I'm going to say hi. And he had a shirt on that said the LMS doctor. I'm like, what's that? Right. And he said to me, well, I just finished building Intel's adaptive AI learning management system. I have a PhD in education, a PhD in management systems. And he said one thing to me, and again, that was so almost like the heavens opened and like a ray of light came down, was like God was like, this is the message you need to hear. He said, when Intel hired me, first thing I asked them is, what does success look like to you? Because just because we want to build something, if you haven't defined what it will do, you can't really build it. And he said, so what I had to do is put my head in the clouds and look down because Intel asked him to take 26 different platforms and combine them into
Mhm.
one. Okay. And when he said head in the clouds, I'm like, can I book an official like 1 hour conversation with you? And he was like, yes. And I booked the hour with him and I brought my laptop. I brought handouts of what I've been doing manually for the past 20 years. And I said, this is my vision of what I want to create. And at the conference, there was like park benches that they covered with whiteboard uh, so that you can write while you're having meetings. And he started architecting my vision while I was speaking to him about my vision. Right. And so this is where, again, I was ready to leave. I was tired, and we ended up talking till almost 1 a.m. And then when I booked the meeting with him, it was at 3 o'clock in the after at I think 1:30 in the afternoon. We ended up closing the conference because we talked till 7 o'clock at night, uh, where he was so enthralled with why I want to do this and how different it is from uh, what's in the market right now. Because there's a lot of HR tools out there, but most of them fix a small cog of a very broken system. My vision is to replace the system completely because it's not about better resumes. And eventually, what my system will do is recognize people for their genius, meaning that if you're really good with people, but you're not necessarily the best at strategy, I can hire you to be with the people. And like, let's say if you're hired as a director, you're the director of people, and then hire someone that is your partner, that is a director of strategy. So they create the strategy, they tell it to you, you tell it to the people, kind of thing. And now you're both a lot more productive because you're not wasting your time doing, let's say, work that you don't care for, work that you consider to be busy work that you consider to be a waste of your time and energy. Like, listen, uh, you know, yes, there's tools that I can do my own accounting. I don't enjoy doing accounting. So I pay an accountant that knows what they're doing to go, here's the paperwork, you organize it and give me the kind of the numbers that I need to know and to be aware of. Same thing, I'm fascinated by law. And yes, ChatGPT can look up anything for me, but I pay lawyers to read contracts because one word can affect the way that things are interpreted. And so, yes, unless I can spend time to teach chat all of the legal terminology, protect me, this and that, there is. So even now, you know, i- as part of my AI, I'm building a psychometric. Now, there are two types of assessments that you can do. One is called ipsative and one is called normative. Ipsative is you against you, and normative is how well do you fit into a particular role title organization, and so forth. And the problem is that there's phenomenal tools out there, like Myers-Briggs, DISC, Colby, Profile XT, that can give you insights. There's the augmented behavior, and they're all 360 EQ. There's a ton of them. They're all great individually, but none of them have taken it to the level of, can we measure cultural fit? Can we measure, you know, what are your intrinsic values? How can I engage you and create a customized engagement strategy for Kimberly that's different from, let's say, Marianne? Because if, let's say, you love learning, Kimberly, I can engage you by saying, here's what you're going to learn on this project. And if you achieve these results, we as a company will pay for development, whether it's personal or professional. So now you have incentive. And if I take Marianne and I say, okay, you are driven by rewards. Okay, so if you achieve these KPIs, we will pay for a vacation for you, for example. And the vacation that we pay for does not count as your regular vacation time from the company. This is in addition to what you're doing. So now you're both happy. You're both getting what you want. And if you don't want to get promoted, but Marianne does, I'm not putting you in a position that makes you feel uncomfortable. So as long as you're honest about how your profile and your priorities, I will engage you and I will do the strategies to keep you happy. And so you're not going to be bitter that Marianne is advanced, she's got more money, she's got more responsibility because you don't want it. Right? And so what I'm building is the ability to recognize not only the individual in terms of social responsibility, in terms of behavior, in terms of communication style, in terms of leadership style, in terms of problem-solving ability, in terms of EQ, in terms of this. But now I can also, let's say, very generic question that most people go through this at least once in their life. Kimberly, do you have a bucket list?
Yes.
Okay. So if I knew what your bucket list is and I could incentivize you to work and reward you with things on your bucket list, would that make you more productive or less productive?
Oh, more.
Right. No one's thought of that. No one's doing that to the way that I'm trying to do it. And that's where, again, I don't care that there's a gazillion tools out there because I'm realistic. Like if I use job seekers and then go to the corporate, right now in United States and Canada, there's approximately 65 million people that are unemployed. There's approximately 50 million people that are severely underemployed, meaning have a university degree but work at McDonald's. And then there's another, let's say 40, 45 million people that are going through some sort of educating, training, tile that are not yet in the workforce. As much as Indeed brags that they have 55 million users, I have resumes from 30 years ago on Indeed that recruiters still call me and go, "Oh my God, you speak French. Do you want to go work in a call center for $50,000?" I'm like, "Did you look me up? I've built two call centers from scratch." Like, but just goes to show that again, it's algorithm. It's this. Um, Now, I help predominantly white collar professionals. Office type, whether it's remote or in office person. And so even if I take out of 160 million, half of that, because half work in retail, hospitality, warehouse, construction, or that's not my area. Skill trade's not my realm, right? That still leaves 75 million. My personal game is to help 1.8 million people achieve success, achieve careers that they love, for example. That means there's another 115 plus million people that need help. And my mindset is I don't care if you copy all my material and become a career coach and you do twice as good as me. Because my mindset is we've helped more people together. We've made the world better. Because I also have faith in God that, God will create other opportunities for me that the revenue I lost because you did it better than me will come from other avenues. Similarly, in the corporate world, I think between United States and Canada, there's close to 10 million companies. Again, I'm not going to say no if, several million want to use my services, right? It'll make me as big as Google kind of thing. But I'm also realistic to kind of go, I don't need everybody. I'm very clear on who I want to target and why, and the industries I want to work in because that's my realm of experience. That's my realm of knowledge. And so can my system be replicated afterwards and, targeted to, let's say, the construction industry, targeted to that? Yes, everything nowadays, and especially with AI, everything is accessible. Yes, can I put certain safeguards so that you can't delete me, attack me, and so forth? Yes, and I'm doing that with my AI currently, in protecting that. Let's say there's no more PDFs; it's all HTMLs and it's protected code and everything like that, so that you can't copy the assessments directly. There is kind of control of privacy of information while being compliant. But the reality is that even if I will say 10% of the workforce changes for the better in terms of recognizing humans and valuing humans, that is a massive impact that will create a ripple effect for generations, right? And once that 10% goes, maybe somebody else can step up and build another 10% impact. Where again, it's not about paying the most amount of money. My uncle was the president and CEO of Spar Aerospace, the equivalent of NASA, basically from Canada. And I remember having dinner with him, and he was telling me that his software engineers and his software developers, or like his engineers and his software people, sometimes get so focused on solving a problem that they forget to eat. So I said, let's do a little experiment. I want you to send somebody from your office once a week to Costco, buy some fruits, buy some granola bars, buy some cookies, some gummy bears, some chocolates, and just put it in the lunchroom and just track productivity. Within a month, productivity increased by 20%, right? Now, again, we're talking cookies, we're talking there. So spending $300 like a week versus giving everybody a 10, 15% raise. I didn't say give everybody a 10, 15% raise. I said feed them because even if you have a cookie, all of a sudden you have a little bit more clarity. And that mental break to go to the lunchroom and grab a cookie or a chocolate bar and come back to your desk might be that moment that you're like, oh, aha. Listen, I've gone to self-development workshops where one sentence in a 3-day event, one sentence was what I needed to hear to to get out of a slump, to have a different listening of, oh my God, this just happened to me, and I needed to hear this so that I can get to the next level.
Yeah. And when you said that about the breaks for, your engineers, from my background in brain-based integrating vision, brain, and body, you need those breaks. I know the days that I work from home in my room next to my office, I have a rebounder, I have my hula hoop, I have my jump rope, which sounds crazy, but sometimes I'll just jump on the rebounder for 3 minutes for one song. I turn on one song,
Yeah,
I jump. And that makes a huge difference in productivity because your brain needs those resets. And the just the walk to the break room was probably the most important part, is that they got up and they moved their body, which if you study with Tony Robbins, you change your state, you change where you're at with everything. As soon as you stand up, you change your state. You start walking, you change your state. You grab,
absolutely.
you changing your state.
Right, but here's the thing is, you and I can have this conversation. We can spend hours talking about all the different things that exist. It is amazing to me how much at the corporate side, conceptually, it's understood, but not execution. I'll speak to a CEO, say, do you have an executive assistant or personal assistant, whatever? And they'll say, yeah. I say, okay, let's assume that they did a great job for you. How do you reward them? And they'll say, well, I give them a check for, let's say, $3,500. I said, okay, instead of giving them the check for $3,500, I want you to pay that executive assistant's salary for the day and send them to the spa to pamper themselves. It's going to cost you $500, $600 for a really good spa where they get a massage and they get a pedicure and they get there. I guarantee you that as much as the money can probably help financially, the fact that you care about their well-being, they will be that much more engaged and that much more productive because for many, and again, depending on where you are in the US, because I remember when my dad had a construction project in Tampa Springs, Florida, and I worked for him for 2 summers. And the people that are making $8 an hour were like, "Can I get my paycheck every single week? Because I want to go, whatever, buy a few beers, buy whatever the model is." I'm like, so if you're making $10, $15 an hour, yes, $3,500 can definitely pay some bills. But the opportunity to re-energize, refresh, because for most people, the spa is a luxury that they won't allow themselves. So the
Mhm.
fact that you care enough to send them to the spa where they're still getting their pay, it will end up costing, let's say, $1,500 instead of 3,500, but I guarantee you'll get a much better employee and a much happier employee. And I'll speak to executives, hmm, I've never thought of that. You know, as much as people love their Starbucks, to this day, I don't understand Starbucks because you need an engineering degree to order Starbucks because you can't just order coffee. It's a non-fat, non-foam, 3 shots of caramel, 2 shots of vanilla, 142.3 degrees, whatever coffee. But having a good coffee machine that you can make an espresso or a latte or a hot chocolate in the office for free, that machine might cost you $1,000. But the level of productivity you get out of a $1,000 machine, just because the idea that it's free, not even if people don't use it, it's the idea that the company cared enough that will change productivity. And this is the conversation that I'm having on small scale and once certain things are in place, a lot more aggressively on a larger scale with my AI company to kind of go, you don't need to spend money. You don't need to be Google or Meta in terms of engagement. Like I now have a 300-page manual that says, here's pretty much most of the ideas you can do to start engaging. And even if there's ones that are like, I like this idea, like we want to build a social committee to do activities, we can brainstorm together activities based on your organization, right? So even with social responsibility, instead of just we fed the homeless or sponsored a hockey team or a baseball team, right? Yes, the company gets their tax sheet, they get the PR out of it. But what if you got data from your employees that says, we care about this? So if your employees care about, let's say, Habitat for Humanity, because housing is a massive issue, right? What if, as a company, you not only donated money to Habitat for Humanity, but you set up monthly, let's say, like places like Atlanta, yes, the winter can be very harsh, but you have enough time during the year that you can go as an organization and build the house together. What kind of impact would that have on your employees if that's a cause that they actually care about and that they can say, I helped this family get a home?
Mhm.
I mean, like I'm making minimum wage, but I just built a home for someone. Do you imagine the ripple effect, the conversation in the office of, yeah, you spent a Saturday and it was hard labor, but the satisfaction of I made an impact. This family is now has a home. You can't, it's not profits and loss on your Excel spreadsheet, but it's changing the conversation on social responsibility. It's changing the conversation on, you know, not just preaching corporate culture, but actually practicing it. You know, I'm a big kid at heart. I love Halloween. If a company says, let's do a Halloween costume party, I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. But if none of the executives dress up, it sends a message of like, yeah, yeah, whatever, we don't care. This is why 80 to 90%, I think the statistics around 83, 84% right now, of people in North America hate their job. Not because of pay. Pay is actually number seven on the top 10 reasons why people leave a job. Toxic culture, lack of clear understanding what leadership wants, and lack of opportunities to bring in new innovative ideas into the organization are the top three reasons why people leave a company. So what if there was a system, in this case, cultural transformation systems, that kind of said, here's something that you've never looked at, and here's patterns that will engage your employees, slash your turnover, tell you which people in your organizations want to be leaders. And if you know that they want to be leaders, if they don't have presentation skills, you now have three choices. You can pay for Toastmasters, you can pay for industry standard certifications, or since my CTO has a background in learning management systems, we can build you a customized learning management system, or we can help you build the mentorship program inside your company so that someone that's a university graduate that wants to become a director in the next 5 years is not just killing themselves for 5 years, but we can kind of check mark. They have presentation skills, check mark. Now they need to learn about strategy. So let's give them a small project where they can be responsible for the strategy and let them execute that. And if it works and it produces certain results, you are ready for check mark. Now you need to do scheduling. So let you schedule something. And again, not on a scale that it's big impact of the company. We're talking in micro stages so that within 5 years, if the check marks are all there, when you promote that person, they're groomed and they're ready for that role. And they're excited because they've been building for 5 years to that. And they know that now it's progressing to the next level. So when they get to director and they want to become a C-level executive, again, the mentorship and the profile changes. The priorities change. If you're single right now and your priority is I want to travel, okay, great. If you get married and you're about to have a kid and you tell the system, my priorities change because I now have a kid, great. That goes to the CEO from my system and says, Kimberly just changed her priorities. She's worked with you for 10 years. She's produced these results. Would you rather lose her, which will cost you on average $100 to $180,000 per month while she's gone, right? And it will probably take you 5 to 6 months to fill, so you'll lose $750,000. Or would you rather give her a $30,000 raise to keep her, for example? It's a win-win because now you get the money that you need because you're expecting baby. I still get an employee, and because I took care of you and I reinvested in you, you're probably going to be even more productive for me because the human connection, you were like, wow, this company really cares. And again, I said 30,000 because $30,000 is a significant raise. It's enough to make an impact on lifestyle where you're not stressing about, like I have two kids in daycare
Mm-hmm.
and it's a half a mortgage practically.
Yeah.
Uh, right. So I've alleviated that. Or I create an education fund for the kid, or something that allows me to connect with you in a way that you benefit from it. And like again, using undercover boss, when the executive was like, I'm going to start an education fund for the kids and I'm going to put $10,000. And people are like, I never thought I'd have money to for my kids to go to college. And all of a sudden, $10,000 is a starting point. And even if you don't add anything to it, but the way that the US investments work that I've learned about, you can take 10,000 and with the correct investment strategy, by the time if you're starting with the kid is 3 years old, by the time the kid's 18, work that could be, 50, 60, $70,000 that pays for at least an undergraduate degree in most cases, unless you're trying to apply for Harvard, Yale, and so forth. But if you're applying to Harvard, Yale, usually there's either scholarships or otherwise. And again, it was on Shark Tank. There was a platform called Scholarly.com where this person, like the individual that started this, figured out a way to get, I think he got $4.3 million in scholarships to go to university. But again, it's knowing where the resources are. And so if that's where your genius lies, because you researched all these scholarships, like, I know there's in Toronto a girl that 3 years ago applied to 150 different scholarships and ended up with $1.6 million to go to university for undergraduate. Think about that. $1.6 million. Like, I wish I knew about that when I was going to university and have to go through student loans and stuff like that. But those resources exist right now. And with AI, if you know how to ask the right questions, you can also find out where those resources are and how those resources are. And this is where I surround myself with people that are much smarter than me because I know where my genius is. And so, as much as AI can create a marketing campaign for me, someone who's been a CMO for companies and grown them and knows the emotional experience, knows some of the nuances that it can, that level of knowledge, unless I've spent countless hours teaching every nuance of the industry of this, I'd rather pay for the expertise to guide what needs to be done and how. And I think that's where we need to get back to, is to recognize that, you cannot replace experience. I don't care if, you're younger, you're cheaper, you know, all these companies that are rushing to market, cars, they're rushing, they're cutting corners and recalling 150,000 cars, 300,000 cars. Why not do it right the first time? And I think we've become a society so focused on the bigger number, the better number, the next number, that we forget about this. And in every industry, in every organization, coaching, like, you know how to do, let's say, emotional intelligence as part of your background, focus on that. If you're dabbling in other things because you have a specific client that has requested and you are comfortable handling it, amazing. And if you've done enough time and you've done it successfully, okay, add that to your repertoire. If you've done courses and designations that created a level of standard like NLP and you became a grandmaster in NLP and now you're an NLP practitioner, more power to you. You just have to have the desire to better yourself and to do more. But I'm looking at people that I'm on their email list that sold solar panels and all of a sudden rebranded as AI experts.
It doesn't go together, does it? Well,
Again,
but
if you,
all the things you're talking about is just really, really genius. And I think you're so far ahead of so many people in this where, you have the experience, you're putting it all together, and that's just like amazing. So I know there's people who would like to work with you. I would love to continue this conversation, but it's time for us to come to an end. So here's
I
the
apologize for rambling so much.
let's just start by asking you, this is the time where you tell people, how do they connect with you? What are your services available now?
So again, so Josef Stetter, Celebrate Group, Cultural Transformation System. I'm most active on LinkedIn, but again, I don't hide my name. So if you put me in any social media, ChatGPT, you'll find me. First of all, so I kind of have two or multiple hats there, where one is the individual job seeker that needs help, that I can literally get you from point A to B very quickly because I've figured out the algorithm. And then I also offer services for organizations that need to downsize, need to hire people, need to kind of engage people, need to minimize their turnover. They're all one and the same because they're kind of similar conversation, because you're kind of going, do you understand what you need? If I can just conclude with this, I recently had a client out of Sweden that built a platform to do regulatory and compliance in the banking industry. Wells Fargo just got nailed with $350 million in lack of compliance, TD Bank 150, and so forth. And so I needed to find someone who works in regulatory and compliance that also knows how to do sales, which is a needle in a haystack. I looked at 1,000 LinkedIn profiles. 700 of them were completely useless because they had their job title, their date of work, and the name of the bank that they work with, no actual information on their profile. So if you think I have the time to message 700 people, no. Of the 300 that remained, I picked the top 100 that I liked. I interviewed 22 people. I sent my client eight. My client called me and said, I wish I had the money. I would hire all eight. That is how well you understood my business and the insights you gave me. I didn't even know about my business as a difference in a model because, yes, a lot of people can get into recruiting. But again, if there's a position that's been open for 6 months, there's a reason it's been open for 6 months. So just because there's a job description doesn't mean that's what you're going to hire. It doesn't mean that it's the correct job description. It doesn't mean that you understand why the wrong people are applying for it, or your HR understands. Because again, unfortunately, most HRs in this very small box, and they don't go out of that box and they don't question things that don't make sense. They just kind of rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And they don't look at psychology. They don't look at behaviors. Like millennials today, Gen Zs, they care more about the corporate's culture. So they'll go on Glassdoor to look at the reputation of the company from employees than the position itself. And if you're ruining your reputation by treating people like, you know, pardon my expression, shit, then that's what you're going to get in return. kind of thing.
Exactly. Well, now I have a personal question for you.
By all means.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
So my beautiful family, they're my purpose. My amazing wife who supports me in everything that I do. My two incredible children that make me laugh every single day. And I am very excited about the fact that I'm going to create a legacy of how much impact I've made for generations because I meet people where they're at and I help them understand where they want to go, in essence. So even if it's the same job title, but to go from a toxic environment to an environment that supports your genius. It's not about promotions. It's not about pay increase. It's about this is where I'm at and this is what I need and finding that for people in for building that for organizations that I can see for the next 100 years, let's say, when these companies build the foundation correctly, how it flourishes thereafter. And to be able to say, I contributed to that.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today and for all your knowledge and sharing.
Thank you for having me and for giving me this opportunity, Kimberly.
Yes, I have one last question. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Uh, Forgive me for sounding a little bit repetitive, but find a why that is bigger than you. And own who you are, uh, because the more you try to change who you are, the more you will be out of integrity and authenticity. And so, yes, I understand right now the economy is chaotic and it's extremely tough for many people. But if you present yourself correctly, people will find you. Um, and that branding yourself, like, I don't know if it's visual, but I'm wearing purple. My favorite color is purple. If you look me up, I'm always in purple. I go to networking event, I have a purple shirt, a purple bag, purple pen, purple notebook, so that even if it like where I met my CTO, where it was in an event with 50,000 people, when I send an email, I'm like, I'm the guy in purple. You might not remember my name, but you'll remember the purple.
Hmm.
So there's a level where I understand like I just saw last night 5 people that said I've been looking for a job for a year and a half and I haven't had a single interview. And I messaged them like, reach out to me. Even if you don't use my services, I'll give you some insights that might shift how you approach things enough that you're seeing the results. Because I appreciate that if you haven't worked in a year and a half, you might not be able to afford me. But because I want to leave a positive impact, let me at least give you those nuggets to change some of the mindset and change the what you're focusing on and where you're focusing your energy so that, you come back to me a year and say, you know what, after I spoke to you within a month, I got hired. To me, that is the such a huge intrinsic value for me to hear that I helped you.
That is huge. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you for your time and thank you for having me on your podcast, Kimberly.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers.